Hello, and thank you for viewing this webinar. Today's topic is getting started with ProTax. So let's get right into it. What is ProTax? ProTax is an online browser-based cloud tax software. It features a full suite of modules to create different types of returns, including T1 personal and self-employed, T2 corporate returns, T3 trust returns, and slip creation using the FX module. As ProTax is a cloud and browser-based tax software, you can access it anywhere, at any time, on any device. You can prepare and file your returns from PC or Mac, and everything is stored in the cloud. So everything is backed up in real time as well as updates. You can also easily and seamlessly have anybody in your QBOA firm work on any returns. All you really need to do to get started with that is select Settings wheel in the top right and go to your team. This section will have all of your users, and you can also, I'll search my name up here, you can edit each member's access in your team, as well as you can edit the client access of each individual member of your team, so you can kind of pick and choose what team member gets what client and what returns for what client. As ProTax is a cloud and online based software, it's really important to remember that a stable internet connection is required. You cannot work on your returns in an offline mode. You will need a stable internet connection for things like your returns to be saved to the cloud, for ProTax to be updated itself. Everything revolves around having a stable internet connection. As well, make sure you have other security in place, antivirus should you need it, VPN for network security, and so on and so forth. An important question that a new user of ProTax may have is, what tax years are supported by ProTax? What year can I actually make a return for? Well, for T1, you can start at 2018 and later up until the most recent module are supported. For T2 returns, tax years starting from January 1st, 2015 to an end date of May 31st of the current fiscal year are supported. For T3, 2020 and later are supported. And for FX form and slip filing and creation, 2022 and later are supported. You may be wondering, if you're a new user to ProTax and you're on a trial account, what can you actually do with that trial account? For ProTax modules T1, T2, and T3, you can prepare up to 7 returns in each module. So that would be 7 T1s, 7 T2s, and 7 T3 returns and slips. You can take as long as you need with them. You can fill them out almost to completion if you'd like to. However, some restrictions do apply, including no e-filing. You can't export to profile, and for T1 specifically, there is no barcode printing. For the FX module, you can create an unlimited amount of returns, forms, and slips for, again, as long as you need to. You can fill them out all the way. Again, the same restrictions do apply. You can't e-file, and there's no exporting to profile. With ProTax comes ProTax Community, which is an invaluable asset when using ProTax. Here you can find in-house made articles. You can find questions and answers to those questions. If you have a specific question and you search for it, you might even just find an answer from either one of our support team or by another user. So 100%, if you're using ProTax, use Community as well. Invaluable. In the community, you can have access to really great resources just like this. So here is an article based on CRA guides. So there's a T1 guide, there's a T2 guide, and other CRA guides for more specialized forms and returns. Also, using the community, you're able to find things such as the list of current form schedules in a PDF format, so you can take a look at what forms are available in ProTax. As well as this is the list for T2, you can find that as well. Same thing for T3, what's available in the T3 module, and FX as well. So these are the forms that and slips that you can create. As a new user to ProTax, you can also take advantage of our free 15-minute onboarding call with a ProTax expert. If you need help setting up ProTax for the first time or migrating competitor files over to ProTax, you can do so during this onboarding call, and a ProTax expert will be able to assist you. Now, let's say you need support with ProTax. Something's not functioning correctly. You have a question, you're not sure what to do. We have the blue ProTax help badge at the bottom right of your return. If you click that, you'll see a few options. So there's chat with the support agent. There's visit our online help hub, which I mentioned earlier is our community hub, and a phone number to be able to call support. Directly from this, if I were to click chat with the support agent, for example, a window will automatically pop up and you can enter your information and be reached to a live agent that will be able to assist you with your issue. Along with being able to get support from agents whenever you need to in ProTax and the community and articles that are published by Intuit, you also have this. This is the ProTax YouTube playlist. Here we get really detailed with specific topics so that if you ever have a specific question or you want to know how to do this in ProTax, you can just come to this playlist and see if it's available. So I'll scroll down a little bit and show you that we just have a plethora of videos, and these are constantly being added and updated. So definitely use this as a resource because it gets very specific with certain things that you might not see in a normal webinar like this, especially when this is just, a getting started webinar. So if this is the only webinar you see, I would highly recommend just going into the playlist channel and taking a look at what else YouTube and content wise that can help you prepare your returns. There are a few different ways that you can purchase ProTax. We have subscriptions for individual modules. You can bundle, and there's one pay options. So let's go through them. I'm on the ProTax pricing page here. If we scroll down a bit, right here. So there's ProTax T1, ProTax T2, ProTax T3, and Forms Expert. So these are the individual subscriptions for the individual modules. So what do you get with each? So for ProTax T1, you have unlimited digital signatures, T1 returns, and e-files. So the digital signatures would be e-signatures using Intuit Sign integrated in ProTax. And you can use stuff like AFR. You can print to your heart's content, whether you want to print to file or print for records, no problem there. ProTax T2, very similarly, you can file unlimited T2 returns, e-file or net file, and again, Intuit Sign e-signatures. For ProTax T3, it's the same story. Unlimited digital signatures through Intuit Sign, T3 returns and e-files. For Form Expert, you have a comprehensive list of forms and worksheets that you can work on and create and file. You can import T4 data from Excel, and you can do returns such as charity returns, NR4s, T4 or T4As, and a lot more. So those are individual subscriptions for each module. What if you wanted to bundle? What if you wanted to take a couple modules you'll use the most and bundle them? Well, we have options to those. So we have T1 and T2 bundle and T2 and FX. So T1 and T2, of course, gives you unlimited of both. You still get access to Intuit Sign, and you're able to unlimited file both of those kinds of returns. T2 and FX, T2, of course, you can file your T2 and create your T2 returns, but you can also use the FX bundle if you need to create T4A slips or any employment details whatsoever. So it kind of works hand in hand together, and you can bundle them together and purchase at the same time. We also have the suite. So this gives you access to everything in ProTax. So unlimited T1, T2, T3, FX filings, and everything that I stated beforehand. You get access to all of that. On top of all of that as well, you can also purchase one pay license. So if you only need to create and file a couple returns, 1 or 2 returns a season, you can purchase one pay directly through ProTax. So I'm in ProTax now, and at the top you'll see pricing. So if I click pricing, I'll have the option to either purchase the subscription if I'd like to, or I can purchase a one pay option. This one pay, once purchased, allows me to file this return specifically and individually. It won't allow me to file any other returns unless I purchase another OnePay, but this OnePay will be linked to this return and it'll allow you to file. I also just want to quickly show the OnePay option for T2 and T3. It is not available for FX, only for T1, T2, and T3. So I'm going to go open a T2 corporate return and hit pricing. There we go. There's the OnePay option for this return as well. And I'm going to go over to a T3 return and show that similarly, if I hit pricing, I can purchase a OnePay for my T3 returns as well. Now that we've got a lot of that initial information out of the way, let's jump right into a live demonstration. So this is ProTax. We have the T1 module. We have T2, T3 trust returns, forms expert, and as well as e-signature. We'll go into that in a little bit. So when you come to this screen, you'll notice you have a lot of options on your screen. Starting at the top, we have a What's New tab. So if you click that, it'll take you to a page which will show you any of the most recent updates. Anything that was recently added to ProTax or changed, you'll find it behind What's New. Tax settings. This is where you do the majority of your tax-specific e-file credentials, transmitting settings, and whatnot. You will not use this icon that you're used to in QBOA because that is for QBOA specifically. For the ProTax settings, you're going to click Tax Settings. And here we have a few tabs here. So let's go through these. E-file. Pretty standard. This is where you enter your e-file number and password. Every return that you make, it'll take the e-file number and password from your transmitter settings and automatically populate into your returns where applicable. Your prepare info, the same exact thing. It will take it from tax settings and put it on any of the forms that require prepare information, such as your representative ID, your name, and whatnot. So prepare information is all here. You can fill that out. For AT1, Alberta corporate returns, all of that information can also be entered here, and discounter information if that applies to you. For the T3 and FX transmission tab, this is where you'd put your transmitter identification and any other information that's required for T3 returns, such as the transmitter address, technical content, accountant contact, and whatnot. In the printing tab, this is where you can really organize and set up how you would like to print. So you see we have all the modules at the top and print sets drop down. So these are pretty standard. You can have a print set for the CRA, a print set for the client, and print set for your office or however you like to do it internally, and T1 paper and T1 paper client. So all of these forms that I have here, we can adjust how we want them printed. If I want the T2203 at the top, I just have to move it there. If I want the business auto form near the top, for however you'd like to do it, you can move that just like that by clicking these dots on the left and dragging it up. You can also change the module and the year. So this is how you change the year. And you can also deselect forms that you don't want printed. Say I don't want any of these printed, I can just unselect them and they will not print. If I move over to the next module, exact same thing applies, other than you can also select if it's going to be federal, Alberta, or both. I want the T2 ADJ at the top, I'm going to do so there. T3 module, same thing. Select the year, where you want this, and if you even want it there. Deselect all those if you'd like. One absolutely fantastic feature in ProTax is letters. With letters, you can create client letters in the same place in QuickBooks Online Accountant as year-end and taxes. It allows access to template letters, which we will go over. You can customize your own templates for your firm using data pulled directly from your accounts, your tax returns, and QuickBooks Online clients using drag and drop variables. As well as you can use that search bar in the template list to find a specific letter. So I have a T1 client letter here and I'd like to edit it. So I'm going to click edit and this is what it looks like. So you're going to see some pink boxes and some green boxes. These are variables. What these variables do is once the letter is in your return, it will pull those variables from your return. So for example, let's say I make a 2023 T1 return. If I added this return to my return rather, the letter will state we have prepared your 2023 income tax return based on information you provided to us. So it'll take everything, the first name, last name, or any variables you'd like to customize, it'll take that from the return. So say you don't want any of this and you just want to add anything, rents held in trust. Let's put that there. It will take rents held in trust either from the client information in work papers or if it's in the return. Next, we have ProTax options. So if you want to enable or disable the live auditor, you can do so here, as well as quick mode, which, as it states, it speeds up completing your returns by reducing bandwidth usage for quicker processing. Now we have ProTax Labs. Any new features, anything that's a little bit more in the early stages will be placed here. So things like Intuit Sign, you can do and use Intuit Sign in ProTax right now for free. So you can definitely take advantage of that, and you can enable or disable it here. Other things like form colors, debug tool, if you contact support may ask for that. And yeah, so anything that is kind of in the early stages, you can come into here and enable them or disable them, whatever you'd like. If you're coming to ProTax from another tax software, you can import returns directly into ProTax. To do so, just open ProTax, go to Import Returns, and you'll see a few options here. Import returns from Profile, carry forward from tax cycle, or carry forward returns from other software. So you're not just limited to these two. There are other software that you can carry forward from as well. So if I go and select Import Returns from Profile, I'll get this window. I can select up to 50 returns to import. That's not a limit total, it's just in this one window. So you can only do 50 at a time. So I'm gonna hit Browse for Returns, and I'm gonna select one of these. So it's gonna show here, uploaded returns, and I'm gonna hit Next. Then, once that's done, I can select a client to attach to this return. So if I already have the client in QuickBooks, or if I want to add that client to QuickBooks, I can then associate that return with that client. So I'm just going to pick one of these, select Next, and it's going to take some time. Of course, if you have more than one, mine took very quick, but if you have up to 50, it could take some time. So just leave that window open or leave it in the background while all of those returns are imported to ProTax. So now I'm going to hit View Returns, and this return has now been imported into ProTax with all of the information that was already in my profile return as well. One thing to note, however, is I was able to import the return directly with the same year because it was from profile. If it's from another competitor's file and you're going through the process of transferring that file to a profile file and then uploading it to ProTax, you can only carry forward. An option that you have to create a return in ProTax in the QBOA environment is through work papers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open work papers for my client. And what you can do is review, adjust, and map, and then export your clients and their work papers and create a return based on them. So let's say I'm in work papers and I've entered my journal entries and my financial statements, and I have them all listed here. What I can then do is go into Income Tax tab at the top, and I can map these to Giphy codes. Giphy codes are used for things like the S100 on the T2 corporate return, S125, so on and so forth. So what I can do is map all of these accounts. I can individually map all of these accounts and choose the Giphy code and then save them. And then once that's done, what I can do is I can start the return in ProTax, and it's going to take me away from the work papers environment into ProTax, and I'll be able to create a return based on that Giphy data from work papers. So what that's going to look like is once I select QuickBooks Client Work Papers for the data source, I'm going to go ahead and hit Continue and create this return. And you're going to see that once I'm in here and I look at something like the S125 or the S100, it should have taken that information into here. So there we go. Total operating expenses, total expenses, just an example. If I go over to S100, I know I had some assets and some cash deposits, and here we are. You may, if you have conflicting Giphy codes and journal entries in work papers that you've exported over to ProTax to create the return, you may need to go fiddle around and ensure that you don't have any duplicates or anything like that. But once you do have everything in here, you can see it carried all of those financial statements into my return very easily, very quickly. And if you need to adjust anything, you can easily do so in ProTax. To create a new return in ProTax, just simply select the module of the return you'd like to create and then select create new return. So I'm going to make a T1 personal return. I'm going to hit create new and then T1 personal. I can select the tax year going back as far as 2018. I can select the client, and if I haven't added that client to QuickBooks already, I can hit add new, which will allow me to fill out client details for a new client. I'm going to go with one I already have, so I'm going to hit this. And then I can link a spouse here as well if I'd like to. You can also choose the spouse from your client list or create a new client for. And then you can also select the marital status. So all you'd have to do is select that, and you can change the return name to whatever you'd like. I'm going to leave it as is for this demonstration. I'm going to hit continue. And that is going to create the new return for me once it's done loading. And here it is all popped up, and here is the new return that I just created. Going back to the T1 module, I'm going to make a new T1 self-employed return. So I'm going to click that, and it's going to look a little different. So you can still choose your tax year. Going back to 2018, selecting the client is the same. You can put the return name in as well. And you have two new options here for data sources. So you have Start Blank Return and QuickBooks Client Work Papers. So earlier, when I spoke about mapping your financial statements to Giphy codes, you can now take that work papers and start a return based on those work papers. So for here, it says, whoops, 12 is not a QuickBooks Online client. If they are a QuickBooks Online client in your firm, you can take your work papers for that client and migrate it, or take that tax mapping information, the Giphy codes, and create the return based on that. To create a T2 corporate return, it's the same process. I'm going to go over to the T2 module, and I have the option to create a new return. I'm going to create that new return, and it's going to look a little different to the self-employed return. I have the client, I have the year start, so the fiscal start date of the year. I'm just going to put 01/01/2023. It will automatically select the end date, but these are all manual, so if you have a shorter fiscal year, you can edit that as well. Return name, just gonna put my return name in. And under data sources, so we have QuickBooks Client Work Papers. So just like with the T1 Self-Employed, you can take that mapped information and create a return based on it. You can upload a file. So we have a .gfi, or a .txt file. So if you have your Giphy information in one of those file formats, you can upload that file and start the return based on that. Or alternatively, you can start a blank return as well. To create a T3 return, I'm going to go over to the T3 module, similarly to the other modules, hit create new return. And again, I can select the client. I can select the year start date and end date. I'm just going to put those 2 days. And there will be the return name, and hit save, and it will create a brand new T3 return. Alternatively, I can go to the T1 module and I can create a T3 return right from a T1 return simply by going under the action column, selecting the down arrow, and select start a T3 return. That will physically create a T3 return based on that T1 return's information. In the Form Expert or FX module, if I wanted to create a new form or slip like an NR4, a T5, or a T4, I can go over to the FX module, select Create New, and it's going to give me a whole host of options for slips or forms to create. I'm going to choose a T4 slip. I'm going to select the tax year. I'm going to select the client, and once again, I can do the return name, If I want to just put the client name in T4, I can do that as well. And then select create a new slip, form, or return. And that is going to create that form or slip for me. Now, this is what a return looks like inside of ProTax. You'll have the return itself here, any taxable amounts, balance, as well as the status, if it's eligible for e-filing or not. And you have your form list here. So these are all the forms that are currently on the return. A lot of them are put in there automatically. And if you'd like to add a form that's not currently in here, you can manually search for it like this, or you can type one in. So I'm going to go ahead and select just any form. Let's go to business consent form, and we're going to add that to the return. So now that return is here and it automatically opens. So that's how you use the add new form slip or letter. And earlier when I was talking about the letter tab and how letters are created, and I said that those variables in the letter take information from the return and put it right into the letter automatically. I'm going to open a letter here. Let's open the T1 client letter and add it to the return. And it automatically opens now and it's put onto the return. And here we can see those variables are no longer there. They're instead replaced with actual information from the return. So you can see here, this is the letter. And if I want to go back to the letters tab under tax settings and go to the client letter, that's all the variables that are pulled into that letter that I put into the return. So I'm going to go back into the return. And that's how the letter looks now. Now, let's move on to just the rest of the return. So you fill it out normally. You have sections of the info form that you can fill out. If I were to go to the T1, for example, now, you're going to see these blue bars. Those blue bars on lines means that the value or anything in that box was automatically populated by profile, either a calculation from other forms or just elsewhere in the return is now being populated here. Now, if I wanted to say, change my business income, you do that with different forms, but let's say I wanted to change it on the T1 itself. So I'm going to make it 16,000 instead. What you're going to notice is it turns red. What the red bar means is it's a manual override. Manual override is you change the value that was automatically calculated by profile, which is shown by the blue. Overrides aren't necessarily incorrect. If you know it's the correct value, then you can override. That's no problem. Just make sure that you're double checking that what you're manually overriding is correct. If I wanted to add my spouse's or dependent's return to the taxpayer's return, all I'll need to do is select link spouse or dependent, select a relationship. So I'm going to add a dependent here. I'm going to select the client in my QuickBooks. There we go. And then I'm going to select the return that was made for the dependent already and add dependent to return. What this is going to do now at the top, we're going to have different tabs now. So I can automatically switch between these returns. So this is the dependent, and then I can switch back to the parent or the taxpayer's return. An amazing feature in ProTax, which was taken from Profile, is the live auditor. So what the live auditor will do is it'll tell you if there's any issues in your return that must be corrected. It may tell you about some general warnings, and it will tell you about any overrides that you made. So if I go to the auditor, and I can see all these e-file errors. So these would prevent me from filing electronically via e-file. So I would have to correct them. Luckily, with the ProTax Auditor, all I need to do is click on one of these messages and it'll take me automatically to where it's talking about. So that's how you can go in and correct them via the auditor. For warnings, these are just general warnings that ProTax may remind you about. So for example, taxpayer's social insurance number is invalid. Now, if I go to click on that warning, And of course, because this is a demonstration return, I put all ones just to add a social insurance number into there. It's telling me it's invalid. However, if I were to say, actually, ProTax, I think that's correct. What I put is correct, and I think you're wrong. All you need to do is select the checkmark icon and sign off on that warning. You're telling ProTax, hey, I got it, no problem. I'll put the correct answer in, or the correct value. And you can see that ProTax listened, and that sign off is now under the sign offs. For overrides, if you make a manual entry to an automatically calculated field in ProTax, it's going to tell you that there's an override. So similarly to the warning and issue, if I click on it, it'll take me right to where the override is. So this one is telling me line 13,500, net business income calculated value is 15,000, and I put 16,000. So if I click the little trash icon, it's going to go back to the calculated value from profile and remove my override. A fantastic new feature in ProTax is Intuit Sign. With Intuit Sign, you can directly request e-signatures from your clients directly through ProTax without having to use any third-party service. So to do so, all you need to do in the return is select Request e-signature, and you can choose which forms you'd like to have signed by your client. So you can select up to 5 documents per request. So I'm just going to use the authorized representative form as an example and hit next. It's going to show this screen, and you're just going to keep following it. You're going to enter the information of that client, and this is going to be what's emailed to the client. So I'm going to hit next. I'm going to put email, put an email in there. Perfect. There's some extra reminders and whatnot. We're going to hit next, and we're going to hit send. So it creates the envelope, and then it sends the envelope over to the client. You have the option to close and continue the return, or you can go to your e-signature dashboard, which can be accessed like any other module in ProTax by going to the ProTax main menu and then selecting e-signature. And here is the dashboard. So if I search for the client that I just sent the e-signature request to, you'll be able to see it here, as well as the status. So you'll be able to see if it's expired, if it was sent, and if it was completed. If you're coming to ProTax from another tax software, you may already be familiar with CRA's AFR, or Autofill My Return. That can also be done in ProTax. To do so, go into the return and select Return Actions, and then hit CRA Autofill My Return. Here, I have not filed and authorized a representative form for this client. However, if you have already filed one, or you're already the representative for the client, you can just go ahead and hit continue, and you'll be prompted with this window that says visit CRA's website. In this demonstration return, I don't have a correct SIN number. However, if you click visit CRA's website, it'll take you to where you can enter your credentials, and then you can start the AFR process. In ProTax, you may notice a lot of these fields that are blue. That's for the automatic calculation, like I mentioned earlier. So you're wondering where you actually make those entries to get those calculations to appear. In ProTax, we use worksheets. So these worksheets are little bite-sized forms where you can very efficiently get the information, very focused information that you need entered on your return done, and not have to be bogged down with other details. So as an example, I'll give you the S3 form. So this form is sent to the CRA, of course, and you'll notice that, again, it's all blue. So there must be other worksheets, and there are. So you can either get to those by adding them here using the add forms and letters, or you can go to source. I already have them on my return, so I'm going to click them here in my forms list, S3 details. You can have multiple, and here, these are all manual entries because there's no blue. So if I were to click and type into these boxes, I can, and these calculations will be made onto the main form that's sent to the CRA. Another worksheet is the S3 principal residence detail, another bite-sized form where you can efficiently calculate disposition of a principal residence without having to be bogged down with any other detail. Let's go over how to file returns in ProTax. So earlier in this webinar, I stated that you can enter your e-file credentials and tax settings. So these need to be here, your e-file number and password, to be able to file your return for a T1, T2, if you're trying to e-file. There's also net filing for T2 returns only, and I'll go over that in just a moment. So once you have your e-file credentials set up in tax settings, I'm going to go into a return and select e-file. This is the e-file screen, and we can see here a summary of a few values in the return. And we also have a PDF format of the return. So you can review it in PDF format how the CRA would see it. So if I wanted to file the return, I can simply file the return now. However, as you can see in this red box, I have issues that are preventing filing. So this is the live auditor at work. It will tell you what errors you're experiencing in the return and show you how to, or tell you where to resolve them. So you can also select refile if you're refiling a return. However, if you're just e-filing, you would select T1 general. I'm going to move over to T2 corporate now. I'm going to review my return. And when I select e-file, I don't have a refile option. I have a T2 federal option. When I select that, I have two options here now. I have e-file account or web access code. E-file account is, of course, if you have e-file credentials and you have entered them in tax settings, you're able to do so and file using e-file. However, you can also file via net file using a web access code. A web access code is a code that you can receive from the CRA for your corporation to file returns, or you can directly file and request at the same time in ProTax. So you would select request WAC, which is web access code, and e-file, and it'll automatically request that and file it at the same time. Now, if I move over to T3 Trust and open a return, I can select transmit. And in the transmit screen, I can transmit either a T3 Trust return or all of these different options, or specifically slips. So that's how you would do it for a T3 return. Again, I have issues that are preventing me from filing. You want to make sure that you clean up any e-file errors that you have in your auditor. And for Form Expert, I'm going to move over here. And I am going to select transmit. Now this is a T4 example. So I'm going to hit transmit. And I can transmit slips. Again, of course, I can't because I have issues preventing me, but this is how you would do it once you're ready to file. In ProTax, you can directly invoice your clients through the return you're doing for that client. If I go into the return and I select e-file in T1 general or T2 corporate, depends what return you're working on, I can see that there's a button for invoice client. When I'm in that option, I have all of this invoicing information that I can send directly to the client. I can add information such as their client information, like billing address and shipping address. If you already have that in your client's information in QuickBooks Online, it should already carry forward to this and populate it by itself, so no need to worry about that. You can also add the service or product that was provided, description, how many were done, etc., etc. And that can be all done here. So I can just fill this out, accounting services, 1 T1 return, quantity, we'll put $500. There we go, just as a random number. You can choose which tax is necessary to use for that client and where they're located. And you can also add a class if your firm already uses that. So you can save it and send it, or save it so when you come back to the return, you're able to work on it or send it then. But yeah, you're able to save and send and invoice your client directly through ProTax. I just want to thank everybody for attending this webinar. I hope it was very informative. We hope to see you at the next one. In this video, we're going to be going over the S3 form, more specifically S3 Principal Residence Detail form, and how to properly manage that in ProTax. Starting off, what is the S3 Principal Residence Detail form? So, you as the preparer completes the S3 Principal Residence Detail form. That information populates in the Principal Residence Designation section of the S3. So that's how you get your values for a principal residence designation into the return. You as the preparer will also complete the T2091 and or the T1255 form and sends a copy to the client for their signature. Clients will sign the form and then return it to you. The T1255 and the T2091 forms each contain some data that transmit to the CRA. So not all, but some. And with those forms specifically, a signed copy must be kept by the taxpayer in case the CRA asks for it. Now, I'm going to show you how to manage that principal residence detail workflow in ProTax. So starting off with, this demonstration is going to be a coupled return. So I have the taxpayer and a spouse. You can still follow this information and use this information if it's just one return. However, you would just need to skip the spousal parts of this demonstration. So starting off, I'm going to go to the main taxpayer's return, go to the info form, and scroll down until I see the question, did you dispose of a property or properties in 2023 for which you are claiming a principal residence exemption? You want to make sure that yes is selected to show ProTax that you are claiming that principal residence exemption. Then I'm going to go over to the spouse's return, and I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to go to Info, Filing, and scroll down until I see that same question. Did you dispose of a property or properties in 2023 for which you are claiming a principal residence exemption? It's going to select yes as well. Once again, we're showing ProTax that we are claiming that principal residence exemption. Now, what I'm going to do is go back to our taxpayer's return. And I'm going to add new form slip or letter and add the S3 principal residence detail form to the return. Once that's added, you're going to want to make a designation here under line 17900. I'm going to select the first one for this demonstration. I designate the property as my principal residence for all of the years that I owned it, or for all of the years that I owned it except 1 year when I replaced my principal residence. I'm going to select yes to that or checkbox it. And then I'm going to go back to the spouse's return. I'm going to do the exact same thing once again, add new form slip or letter, and add the S3 principal residence detail. Add to return. And also select the same answer that I did on the main taxpayer's return. Now, I'm going to go back to the taxpayer's return because this is it for the spouse. If you're claiming it 50-50 and you're claiming it on one spouse or the first spouse or the main taxpayer, you do not have to come back to this worksheet if for the other spouse. So now I'm going to go back to the main taxpayer. I'm going to go to S3 Principal Residence Detail. I'm going to select Details at the bottom, and this is where I can enter my information. I have percentages that I can add. Percentage reported by spouse, by others, and reported by taxpayer, which will automatically fill out based on the percentage that we add for the other two options. In this example, because it's a spouse, I'm going to just do a 50-50 split. So if I type 50 into that box for the spouse, the reported by taxpayer will also show 50%. Now I'm just going to enter some basic information about the residence. There we go. And then what I'm going to do is select the year of acquisition. I'm going to put 2012, and the proceeds of disposition. I'm going to put 250,000. Now, I have this entered, and this information will also show as a 50% split for the spouse. To show you, I'm going to go back to the spouse's return, and then I'm going to go to the S3 form, and I'm going to scroll down to the principal residence section. As you can see, I have the 125,000, which is 50% of the 250,000 filled out. So now you have it entered for your S3. It's there. That information is good. You do not have to continue with the S3 principal residence detail form on either your spouse's or the main taxpayer's return. Now that we've entered our information for our principal residence exemption, we do not have to go back to these sheets for now. However, you'll notice that you will have a T2091 form. And because it's a 50-50 split in this situation, the spouse will also have the T2091. There may be a situation where you would get the T1255 form instead of the T2091 form, but that is if the taxpayer or taxpayers are deceased. That's when you would fill out the T1255 instead of the T2091. So if the residence was owned 100% by an individual in the relationship, the non-owner spouse does not complete a T2091 or T1255 form. So let's say Fame Durst has 100% ownership of that property or that residence, and Shelley has 0. Shelley would not have to fill out a T2091 or a T1255 form. So let's go over this. I'm going to go into details of the T2091, and we can see that the information was entered and calculated from the S3 principal residence detail form. If option 1 in line 17900 of the S3 was selected, complete the first page elements of the T2091 form that were not automatically calculated. So that would be under the designation. So you would just fill out the rest of this until you get to section 2. If you recall, we did select option 1, so that's all we would do. However, if you selected option 2 or option 3, then you would have to fill out the rest of the T2091, and that goes the same for the T1255. If option 1 was selected, you only fill section 1. If 2 or 3 were selected, then you would fill out the rest of the T1255 form. One very common issue that can occur with the S3 principal residence detail is if you fill out the details from both spouses. So if you recall, I just filled out the information on one taxpayer's return, which is the correct way to do so. If, for example, Shelley also entered that information, so I'm going to go to Shelley, select S3 principal residence detail. If I filled out that exact same information, put the 50-50 split, all of that, when you e-file, you will receive an error regarding that. So if that's the case, ensure that you delete the detail section of this one of the spouses, and that it's only on one spouse and not both. That's how you can avoid that error. And that was how to manage the S3 principal residence detail workflow in ProTax. I hope that was informative and it can help you prepare your returns more efficiently. Thank you very much for watching.